Wow. I've never got to do that before. Thank you. Welcome to a very special City Club discussion today of something that's old and familiar to those of us in Cleveland and also new and exciting. The West Side Market is probably the truest Cleveland landmark you can think of in both a historic and an emotional sense. It opened in 1912 and has been a source of fresh food year-round for the people of Ohio City, the entire city of Cleveland, and the region ever since. By some estimates, a million people or more a year pass through its doors. My bet is that many of you probably shop there on a frequent basis, and if you don't, that when you have guests in from out of town, it's one of the places you take them so they can get a sense of true or authentic Cleveland. On the eve of its centennial, the West Side Market finds itself at the nexus of two important trends in urban living and design. The first is what people who do this stuff for a living call place-based development. And that's the idea that smart, interesting, entrepreneurial people are attracted to really cool, one-of-a-kind places. And anybody can tell you that the West Side Market certainly fits that description. The other is the local foods movement. This is the idea that for reasons of health and sustainable economics, more and more people prefer to eat food that is grown fresh, and is grown very close to proximity to where they live and where they're going to be eating it. Ohio City, in some ways, the West Side Market was doing local food long before local food was cool. But as a result of that, Ohio City has probably been one of the real centers of this effort in all of Northeast Ohio. You've got a proliferation of restaurants there led by chefs who long ago figured out that they really want to cook with local ingredients. That means changing their menus on a weekly basis throughout the year. And they have a customer base that looks for that and appreciates that. We've seen the proliferation of microbreweries and now a micro distillery we're going to hear a little bit about, and what's become sort of a pub district around the market. And also a number of other businesses that are food related that have popped up there. And finally, you also have urban gardens, a number of them in Ohio City, one of them that you can literally see from the back of the West Side Market. Our panelists today are involved in various aspects of this exciting effort around the West Side Market. On the far right of our panel is Christine Zuniga-Eadie. She is a native of San Antonio. She came to Cleveland to study, to go to graduate school at the Levin School of Urban Affairs at Cleveland State University. And since September of 2010, she's been the manager of the West Side Market. Next to her is Sam McNulty. Sam is an entrepreneur in the neighborhood. He recently opened his third establishment. Sam says that he loves all things to promote Cleveland, bicycles, and beer. He is the owner of the aforementioned still, which he can tell you about. I think he had to go down to the hills of West Virginia to find that, but he can talk to us a little bit about that. And despite we were speculating about his age, Jan Roller and I were at the table, he is old enough to drink the stuff that he makes. So, next to Sam, we have Eric Wobser. Eric, for the last 20 months, has been the executive director of the nonprofit formerly known as Ohio City Near West Development Corporation, now simply Ohio City Inc., which fits a lot which makes him for a much smaller business card. Eric has been in Cleveland since 2005, lived in Ohio City the entire time. And then we have Jeff Campbell. Jeff is the proprietor of Campbell's Sweets Factory, a business that's operated in the market since 2004. The popcorn, which is on your table, which you were encouraged to consume or stick in your pocket and eat on the way back to the office, is one of his many products. He can talk about some of his product lines. He is about to open a second location very close to the market, still in the Market District, which is evolving now both in the streets around Ohio City and north and south on West 25th Street. He's going south of 25th, and they're opening on August 9th. So I'd like to begin the discussion by asking Eric a little bit, since, Eric, you've talked a lot about and wrote for our paper about, and since kind of the emphasis of Ohio City Incorporated recently, has been this idea of an artisan-based economy. Sure. Can you talk a little bit about that, in particular about what the West Side Market means in terms of the vision that people in your neighborhood are crafting for its future?
Absolutely. What I would say is The West Side Market, as was mentioned, is nearly 100 years old, and that success dates back 100 years. So the market itself has been an exception to a rule, I think, from the perspective that while the world has changed around the market has changed very little. It's always been a place where local artisan businesses have been thriving, but I think over the course of the 20th century, as the rest of the world focused on how to create efficiencies and scale in business, we lost a lot of that local flavor. And what we're seeing over the past few years, particularly in Ohio City, and I think fittingly in Ohio City, because the market has not changed, is we're really going back to the future from the perspective of consumers are looking for what they've lost, that authentic experience, that local product that doesn't have a taste as if you pulled it off a shelf and had to peel open plastic to get it. And it's not limited to just food, but I think it has naturally started with food and in craft brewing. And so in Ohio City, we've had a great deal of success in this local artisan movement. I think it's no accident that a lot of this success has come over the past few years. If you look at a lot of the folks in this room that have played a large part of that. Neighborhood Progress has increased its investment in the neighborhood. Councilman Simperman has been the councilman for the West Side Market for a little over 2 years. The Ohio City Board of Trustees has really noticed the strength of this artisan cluster of businesses in Ohio City and made that a priority in our new strategic plan. Lutheran Hospital and Charter One have made significant investments in this movement. So a lot of those folks are in this room, and I'm certain, I want to say thank you to all of you, and I'm certain I'm missing some, but there has been an incredible amount of attention put on the market and local businesses. And it was interesting to hear Gary in the beginning talk about the 100-year history of the City Club. And Jim Foster, it's a real honor to be at the City Club today. I've been in the audience many times. I've never actually been on a panel. He talked about an incredible moment in the history of the City Club when Robert Kennedy spoke here the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And it's that 100-year history that the City Club has played on a national and a global stage that the market has played on a local stage. You mentioned that gathering place that the market is, and really what we're building on and what the artisan economy is building on is that we want that back, as a community. So the next 100 years are going to be critical for the market, but the fact that the world has sort of crashed against the market and the market didn't break and it stood and is now producing these local businesses which are proliferating through our neighborhood and neighborhoods like ours is a pretty exciting time to be in Ohio City.
Christine, you were sort of the keeper of the landmark, the keeper of the treasure here. Can you talk a little about the kinds of things the challenges you guys face over there now in terms of some things have been the same for 100 years, like the hours, and some people would say the bathrooms. But as you move forward, what are the kinds of things that you think and that your vendors, your tenants, your clients think you need to do to sort of keep it contemporary and to keep it becoming the sort of the economic engine that it has been and potentially can be even greater?
The mayor put together a Centennial Commission last year, and it produced a report in January, and it made several recommendations for ways that the market can move into the future. Among the, I think, most important ones is that the market needs some type of dedicated fund for its capital needs so that there can be investments in the infrastructure of the market. And I think that as we get into the centennial year that we're going to have, of course, a very exciting celebration, but it also needs to be a very meaningful one for the market so that 100 years from now we're not looking back at what we used to have, but we have a market that's very vibrant, that has sustainable energy systems, that is integrated into the market, and that has some places for people to park on Saturdays.
Jeff, as one of the vendors, as somebody who's been there for 6, 7 years now, what drew you there in the first place? What are the unique aspects, and what do we need to do going forward to preserve and enhance the asset?
Well, the market, we came out of the mall industry, and the malls, in my opinion, they have declined tremendously. One of the malls that we were in was Randall Park Mall, and the rent factor, even when we left that, was $3,000 a month. And whenever we looked at the market, of course, in my business, I need impulse. And we looked all over Cleveland for a place where you could have impulse buying. And that's what the West Side Market provided for us. You know, definitely.
Okay. Now, Sam, you've not been located specifically in the market. You are right outside. Now you're almost literally right outside the door. In fact, your newest place, was it indeed at one point, it was some type of animal was kept in there. It was, can you talk a little about the new spot you've moved into, but also what drew you to make your investments in Ohio City and in the Market District?
It started when I was really young, going down there with my family. 7 kids in the family. We were regular West Side Market shoppers because of the value and the quality. And we would always start by going into what's now the brew house for Market Garden Brewery. But it used to be a poultry slaughterhouse. So you could go in there, pick out a chicken, a duck, or a goat, come back after shopping at the market, and it would be plucked, dressed, and ready to go, still warm. So that was my earliest memories of coming down the market. That kind of, doesn't get much fresher than that experience. And then years later, fast forward, I was also at the Urban Studies College at Cleveland State University and interned for what is now Ohio City Inc. And that's when I really decided, I think I was like 18 at the time, I knew I would end up there somehow, either living or working or doing something. Then fast forward till right now, and we're just having a great time down there. I live in Ohio City, work there, and play very often there.
We talked a little bit beforehand. This is, you guys can see both the growth and the interest in this. Talk about, let's start again with you. Talk about Saturday night and kind of the way that you, and as you've been talking about the others, what's been going on, what you see in the Market District in terms of the interest of people coming in.
Saturday night I was down at the Burning River Festival. I should have been in Ohio City, but no, we were out there in the rain having a good time with Great Lakes. But Saturday night, yeah, the whole street is bustling. It's like, I would guess probably one of the busiest streets in the city in terms of pedestrians, bicyclists, just everybody coming and going. There's a lot of vitality, a lot of energy.
And what do you see? Really quickly, I would add, it's not just Saturday night in the Market District that's thriving. The great part about Ohio City and the anchor that the market is the vitality in the Market District starts as early as 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and you can't imagine a more vibrant place in all of Northeast Ohio, probably the state of Ohio, from literally 7 a.m. on a Saturday till they're kicking people out at 2:30 a.m. And that's a lot of what's driving. It's that daytime traffic that the Market District can provide that I think is really unique. And so it's how you build off of an anchor like the West Side Market to create what's truly a 24-hour community. And I wouldn't want to get lost in that Sam does live in the neighborhood. That's a big part of that artisan economy is that they're in this not just 9 to 5, but they live and breathe this. So I see Sam every day of the week, whether he's working or not, because we're both interacting and working in the neighborhood. And that's a huge part of this movement is that it's a lifestyle.
We talked about the estimates, I think, a couple of years ago were a million or more visitors a year. Where do the people come from? Are you able to track either through surveys or charge slips and that sort of thing? Where are people coming from who are coming to the market and to the Market District businesses? Christine?
There was a customer survey performed very recently that tracked something like 1,000 or so zip codes, around about that number. And we found that the zip codes, of course, are coming from the Cleveland region, the greater Cleveland region. A lot of times, I think in the past, there was this idea that the West Side Market was just for West Siders or something. And I think maybe 10 years ago, looking at survey data from zip codes, we saw that it was mostly West Side suburbs and things. But now we see a lot more East Side customers coming in. So it's really not just the West Side Market, it's Cleveland's public market. But beyond just the Northeast Ohio region, we're getting customers from across the nation very easily, people who are attracted to some of the publicity that the market has received through the Travel Channel and the Food Network. That's really driving some people to come and explore the market.
Are you seeing that in terms of the people who come to your stand?
We are. Whenever you look at our credit card receipts and stuff, the basis of what is coming into the market They're still local, the people from Cleveland, the people from the surrounding suburbs, but we're reaching out way farther than that now. I'm seeing people from Indiana, from Kentucky. We're seeing zip codes from Pennsylvania on our credit card machine. I mean, we see it from all over the place. But still, the basis of what that market is built on, they're local businesses, or they're local customers.
Okay.
So.
As we talk about, again, moving forward, anytime you talk about change, there's always a great concern. I mean, I moved to Cleveland in the 1980s, and there was a debate in Ohio City about gentrification and the effect of gentrification. As you see the investment in the neighborhood around there, as you see perhaps talk of a different, changing the hours, a different market mix, how have the people the longtime vendors, how have they reacted, and also the businesses that have been in the neighborhood? Do they see this as a positive thing, or is there some concern about the want to start?
I would just say that, first of all, it's great to see there are many longtime vendors actually in the audience today. And one of the ways that we handle change in the neighborhood is through constant communication. I can't say enough about Amanda Dempsey, who is our market district director, and through Ohio City Inc. has really worked hard to build a strong relationship with those vendors. And you talked about gentrification. I think one of the things that's really special about the West Side Market is these are many, almost exclusively family-run businesses. Or when you look at the growth of businesses like Sam's at Market Garden, or the Great Lakes Brewing Company, or Campbell's Popcorn Shop, or many of the other food production businesses, Ohio City Pasta is a great example, they're creating real jobs, and those are living wage jobs. You know, those are jobs that are, people aren't getting wealthy from, but the real activity from these folks wholesaling and distributing outside of Northeast Ohio is creating jobs for people that can walk to work in the neighborhood or take public transportation, for which Ohio City may be the most accessible neighborhood in Cleveland, from the perspective that at 25th and Lorraine alone we have 9 bus lines and a train station. So while we do balance change, with economic opportunity comes opportunities from people from a wide variety of income classes. And the change is really overall been positive for the neighborhood and for the market sales in general. Talking to folks like Jeff, some of the percentage increase he's seeing, when the bottom line gets better, that benefits everybody. And I think Ohio City really prides itself on being a place that is having those conversations because economic integration is a really difficult thing to do. I think we do it pretty well, and we're excited about continuing that conversation.
Christine? On that, again, what do you hear from sort of the longtime tenants and stuff? I mean, is there a tension there, or is there sort of a welcoming about what they see going on around them?
I think the tenants have an organization called their Tenants Association. So both myself and Amanda Dempsey out there, we work very closely with them. I think it's really about sharing information. I think for an organization like the Market that has gone through all these changes, the Tenants Association has been a pretty steady force within the Market over the years, been a really strong advocate for what the tenants need. So it's having just a continuous conversation with them about things, bringing the vendors involved in the Centennial aspects. So it's just I think a process, as an urban planner would say. It's really just having the conversation is the most critical component.
And just really quickly, I would add the market research that Christine described earlier, I think is critical in how we have those conversations, because when you can show how customer trends are evolving and where people are coming from, you're backing up with data the information that you have. So this conversation about how the neighborhood's changing and market customer preferences are changing can really come from that data, and so it's all about data, it's all about relationships and using that in meaningful ways. And I think that you'll see, we have 12,000 residents in Ohio City. We have 150 local businesses, and the Market alone, the Market will need to continue to draw people from just outside of Ohio City. But I think those neighborhood residents as consumers are a very safe and growing piece of some of these businesses. And so while It may look like gentrification at first. My wife and I have been in the neighborhood you mentioned for over 6 years, but we're expecting our first child and we're not planning on going anywhere. So as the near west side grows in population and we develop customers, Vince is my butcher right there, we'll be feeding 3 people in September, where before that we were feeding 2, and we'll continue to use Vince. And so as the neighborhood continues to grow, that will continue to, I may spend less money and time at Sam's business, but I'll certainly be spending more with Vince. And so I think that the growth of these neighborhoods will be critical to the stability of the businesses. So.
Jeff, in terms of the market, you in some ways are maybe sort of an example of a new thing, which is also the market as an incubator for businesses, because you start it there, you've reached the point where you're not leaving the market, but you're going to have this off-site second shop. Other businesses that have gone in there, I think Ohio City Pasta is an example of one that's also looking for, has moved into, again, they need something more to the customer base they've developed. How is that, was that something you anticipated when you moved in there? And do you see other possibilities for other businesses, again, sort of as the incubator type thing of movement?
We came into the market with the idea of using it to promote other products, new products that we are developing. Dichotomy corn is one of them. That product came out of an opportunity to test market it, and we have a mass amount of people coming in there able to try it. And then new things that we want to do, like with homemade marshmallow and different types of brittles, and an opportunity to again get it in front of the people. And I think that the market can draw a lot of companies in, or potential companies in, to try new products and to get them out in the market, and then to branch out with it. And you mentioned Ohio City Pasta, and that's exactly what happened with Gary. And he has developed his pasta and grown his pasta. I think that people that aren't in there even today that have grown, like Chupa's Marketplace. They now have a store outside. They're not even part of the market anymore. And Romano's, they've been able to come in, build their business, get their identity, and then, in their case, they completely moved out. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. Now, Sam, you may talk a little about what's going on in outside of the market building itself. You've got this proliferation of restaurants, a couple of microbreweries now. You're moving into the micro distillery. What's sort of the synergy of all these people being together? And how does that help you and help other people prosper and do well there in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it probably sounds cliche, but the whole idea of like the synergy of all of the similar uses or complementary uses clustered together in one area is what really draws people, I think. I think if the West Side Market were by itself on an island, it wouldn't get as much traffic as it does. Just like Great Lakes is doing better now that the brewery's open, now that there's all these restaurants around them. In 23 years, they had their best year ever last year in the neighborhood, and that's a good sign that the tide is rising.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Related to the rising tide, Eric, I know you've worked with one of the jobs that you guys do at Ohio City Inc. is to do a lot of the storefront renovation, worked with landlords to lease space. How is that market doing in this obviously difficult economy, and do you see it? Do you see the benefits of the other activity, the buzz going on?
The demand we're seeing in the neighborhood is incredible, and we've been very fortunate. Charter One just last year announced what's called the Growing Communities Initiative, and one of the aspects of that plan was a small business competition. And so we had at that point 11 vacant storefronts in the neighborhood of around 100 storefronts total in the neighborhood. The small business competition, where we're really focusing on those local artisan businesses, we're able to fill 6 of those storefronts with very small grants, not small, but modest in terms of a business's annual sales. So we have all of these local businesses, much of which will be local retail, which we're sorely missing from the city, that's moving into the city, and we can see that with just a little bit of help, that there are folks who are looking to take that plunge. And they're finding that they can be successful in the neighborhood in large part because of that high foot traffic, much of which is helped by the West Side Market. And in addition to Charter One's investment, Lutheran Hospital has also stepped up and invested in that program, as well as a program to help us beautify the exterior of many of the storefronts that I know both Sam and Jeff will take advantage of in their retail operations over the course of the next year. So it's really beautifying that district and creating a complete district. But we've had, so just to put it in perspective, in a little over 2 years, there's been over $40 million in private investment in the Market District. Over 20 new businesses have moved into the area, and when you talk to them, many of them are thriving. There was a quote from a real estate developer doing business in the neighborhood, Ari Marin, who you may know from East 4th Street, that said in his 11 years doing real estate and development in Cleveland, he's never seen so many deals come together so quickly, which we're incredibly proud of, and we know is a testament to that sort of 24-hour district that we have, because we have an employment base with anchors like Lutheran, St. Ignatius High School, the West Side Market, Voss Aerospace, and then the commercial office market we have, but the 1 million visitors a year that are coming on a weekly basis to the West Side Market, complemented by a dining and entertainment district that's emerging at night. It's really a wonderful convergence of a lot of activities that together, while it's not always easy and it can be messy, is exactly how a thriving city should look and operate.
Christine, in terms of people who want to go into the markets, obviously you've had some vendors, businesses have been passed from generation to generation, been there a long time, but there's others who are relatively new and maybe they're interested in sort of an incubator type situation or just sort of changing the mix as a city changes ethnically and stuff. People are looking for different sorts of products. Do you have vacancies? Do you have a waiting list? And if you have vacancies and how do you decide who gets in essentially? What's the right mix, and how do you figure that out?
Right. Well, we have 0 vacancies within the main market house, though we have a few in the L-shaped produce arcade. For the main market house, we do have a stack of applications in people who want to come into the market. That turnover within the market is rare. People, once they get in to the market, they hold on to it, they pass it down, they build it up for a while. So getting into the main market house is actually I haven't had to go through that process yet of selecting anyone since I've been there. But generally speaking, what I'd be looking for would be applications that increase the diversity of products at the market. We have, there's no, I think, set rule. It's a very dynamic place, so it's not like I need to have 5 cheese shops, 6 beef butchers, things like that. I think it just depends on both the space that's available and what kind of products the applicant would be bringing in. For the produce arcade, it's been a little bit trickier to get in new vendors into that space, so it's kind of a learning process here. I think a lot of folks want to see more local product in the market, but there are some, I think, inherent challenges trying to get local product in a place year-round. We're obviously a seasonal growing period, so we can't have someone who's able to supply, fresh greens in January. So there's some kinks to work out, some ways I think that we'll be able to have local produce year-round through season extension issues or techniques and things. But right now, I think it's a goal that we're moving towards for local foods at the market.
Okay, well, great. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to a special program featuring a panel discussion with Jeff Campbell, Sam McNulty, Eric Wobser, Christine Zuniga-Eadie, and moderated by me, Joe Frolik. We will return momentarily for our traditional City Club questions. We encourage you to formulate questions for our speakers now and remind you that your questions should be brief and to the point and questions. We welcome all of you here, especially those who are guests, and we hope you will join the City Club and become active in our ongoing city dialogue. On Friday, July 29th, later this week that is, the City Club welcomes Jim Clifton, the chairman and CEO of Gallup Incorporated. The following Friday, August 5th, the City Club will host Dr. Gordon Gee, president of The Ohio State University. If you wish to make reservations or order a CD or DVD of today's program, please call 1-888-223-6786. Let's try that again, 1-888-223-6786 or 216-621-0082. We are pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by Allegro Realty Advisors, Charter One, Councilman Joe Simperman, Neighborhood Progress Incorporated, Ohio City Incorporated, and Spangenberg, Shipley, and Leiber. Thank you for your support. Now we would like to return to our speakers for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. Holding the microphone today is City Club Program Director Carrie Miller. Now for our first question, please.
Thank you for a very nice discussion about the day-to-day operation. Part of the advertising that brought out this nice turnout was that you won out on a worldwide competition with other major cities, and I was wondering what that came about, and what are a few of the celebrations you planned during the next year and a half, and also please comment on your worldwide prominence.
Thank you for bringing up the Market Conference. Who would like to start with that?
I can
Eric?
start on the Market Conference. And first of all, I saw Mayor Jackson's Chief of Staff, Ken Silliman, is here today. The city was a huge champion, along with the councilman, to bring this conference to Cleveland. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's the 2012 International Public Markets Conference. Cleveland was selected among 5 finalists that were London, England, Toronto, Ontario, Charleston, South Carolina, and Seattle, Washington. And that's pretty steep competition. And this is the 9th such conference. It's never been held in the Midwest before. The last 3, I believe, were in San Francisco, New York, and Washington, D.C. So this is a very coveted conference. And we were very fortunate to, in partnership with the city, put together an application and win that conference for Cleveland. And that, again, I think says right there what that worldwide prominence is of the West Side Market. And I have learned, we have learned as an organization a great deal about public markets in other parts of the world. And the West Side Market is truly special among public markets. There are some that rival the market in attendance, but there are none that really rival it in authenticity. Even folks at Pike Place in Seattle and some other well-known markets will say they do not have the value shoppers, the amount of actual fresh meat and the amount of butchers and bakers that you still see at the West Side Market. They become much more touristy. While we do benefit from tourist visits at the West Side Market, we are very much still driven by those regular shoppers. And so the architecture of the place, the ambiance of the surrounding neighborhood, and the character of these vendors themselves is truly distinct, and it's what makes the West Side Market, what we argue at Ohio City, is one of 5 truly worldwide significant cultural institutions in Cleveland, along with Playhouse Square, the Rock Hall, the Orchestra, and the Art Museum. And so I think it's really important that when we think about philanthropy and when we think about opportunities to support historic, including the City Club of Cleveland, I would actually add to that list, but from a physical monument type place, that it's important to keep the market in that conversation, because while it is a place of commerce, it's near and dear to the hearts and to the civic fabric of Cleveland. And I think I don't want to discount the quote from Councilman Simperman when we were trying to win the Public Markets Conference about that authenticity. He said, if you want to take a picture of somebody throwing a fish, no offense, Tom, from Kate's Fish, I don't know if you throw fish, but take this market somewhere else. But if you want to see real people at a real market, bring this conference to Cleveland. I think that really won the day with Project for Public Spaces, and we are proud to host the conference next year.
I'd like to add, speaking of international acclaim, I'm sure most of you read the USA Today article that voted Ohio City one of the top 10 neighborhoods in the world to bar hop. So we're pretty, we're pretty proud of that, too.
Thank you for putting more places to hop there. Looking ahead to next year, besides the conference, are there specific things you're thinking of or in the discussion stages to do to commemorate the fact that it's the 100-year anniversary of the market?
Well, I think right now everything's in the planning stages. We have some broad ideas that came out of the Mayor's Centennial Commission report, but I think it's probably going to be similar to a series of events culminating in a large festival or some type of large event that really helps to commemorate the market. So it'll be a series of things that will be announced probably early next year.
Okay.
Christine and Amanda from our office are actually interviewing now event consultants to help, and the Gunn and Cleveland Foundations have provided generous grants to help that celebration along. And so you stay tuned for the details, but I think they were excited by the folks that they've met with, and we should know soon.
Well, you've also created a pretty nifty little, or in the process of creating a really even better space public space across from the garden, where you can be able to do concerts, do other sorts of events and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big investment from the city to redo Market Square Park, which we found is a best practice in other cities with markets, is that because of that high traffic and the infrastructure that a market can support, they're really natural places for outdoor retailing, also with local businesses. So when you get back to that artisan economy, the city's investment to create a marketplace not only in the market, but across from the market should help more local businesses to prosper and create a really dynamic space to hold some of that programming in 2012.
Great. Go ahead.
Since the market has lasted almost 100 years as a traditional market, could you tell me what steps are being taken to keep it traditional and original so that Cleveland doesn't get robbed of this jewel?
Christine, you want to start with
Hi, Vince. I think the planning for the market Centennial right now has involved a lot of different stakeholders and whatnot. And through that conversation, one of the things that I mentioned before that rose straight to the top was looking at ways to reinvest into our marketplace to make sure that it is lasting for generations beyond where we're at right now. I think there's a lot of needs that the market has for its customers, like parking, and that parking conversation is something that we're continuing to look at ways to improve, particularly on peak Saturdays, ways to help both turn over parking or increase the amount of parking that's available for customers.
Okay. Over here.
Good afternoon. I'm Jason Bristol. I'm a resident of the neighborhood, and I use the market all the time. I'm also very concerned about local food, and we've touched on that a little bit. But for a lot of us, we drive to Crocker Park or over to Shaker Square on Saturday mornings to get local food that is grown by our local farmers. And I'd like to know, maybe, Christine, what specifically is the plan to increase local food at the market? If it's hard to get on the list, if it's hard to get a stall, how are we going to address good local food at the market?
Yeah, it's right now learning more about kind of those challenges to bringing local foods to the market has revealed a couple of things, like our leases right now require a year-long commitment, so we don't have much built-in flexibility there. So we need to have a partnership with different local farmers that would be able to bring in foods throughout the year. Obviously, as consumers get more educated and want to make those purchasing decisions that reflect their values, that farmers markets are appealing to that segment. I think at the same time it's also critical to also educate our vendors as well about customers who do want to make those types of local purchasing decisions. So we have an amazing network of urban farmers within Cleveland, so I've begun some very preliminary discussions about looking at ways to bring them in at a stand. Some other of our regional farms looking at ways to bring them into a stand. It's a process that I think we should have worked out probably by next year. It is something that we can't start right now because a lot of those farmers make their planting decisions based on where their market is going to be. So connecting right now while they're planning for next year's season, I think will help arm us for 2012, which also coincides with the Year of Local Foods for the Mayor's Sustainability Conference. So it's really an important component for next year.
And I would just add to that I think money talks, from the perspective that many of the changes that are going to happen in what's offered at the West Side Market are going to be customer driven. And in the market research that we were able to do last year, one of the things that we found is where the market is most over-retailed is in produce, where I think the issue of the availability of local product is most pronounced. And as Christine mentioned earlier, it's really the one place in the market where you actually have vacancy. So there are vacancies currently for folks that want to come in and offer local product at the market. And as you see more customers skipping the market on a Saturday to head to places like Shaker Square, that'll start to impact the bottom lines of market vendors. And so if you're a customer, let the folks, and I want to offer, the vast majority of vendors, particularly on the inside of the market, have wonderful and great products. Let them know the types of products you'd like to see, but people are going to choose with their pocketbook, and it's ultimately maybe presenting some of that information to vendors so they can respond quickly of the types of products that they're looking for, but not to lose sight of the fact that many people do shop at the West Side Market because of that value proposition. And so there's a balancing act being done at the market between a very growing segment of educated customers who are looking for a very high-end and local product, as well as the people that come to the West Side Market because it's affordable. And so there are vendors who are going to continue to cater to that audience, as they should, in a neighborhood in Ohio City with 2,000 public housing residents and public transportation providing meaningful access to products. And so this will be an ongoing conversation. I think you'll start to see vendors on their own, and very similar to what we were able to do with the Growing Communities Initiative. Our job is to provide small incentives to help push vendors in that direction so that they're offering a local healthier product. It's really balancing those carrots as well as the sticks to get us where we'd like to be.
Yes. Are you experiencing some of the growing pains that the warehouse district does according to residential and live workspaces as growing with the continual growth of the people who are using the West Side Market? And also, how do you see the West Side Market weaving itself into the rest of Cleveland? I mean, what is your vision statement for how you will participate and grow the rest of the city with the success you're experiencing?
Eric, you want to start with that?
I would just say that we're very fortunate when you look at the access that the city has to the market. We're at the heart of a very walkable neighborhood where people can walk to the market. We're outside of downtown, the biggest hub for public transportation. So people can get to the market. There are very few people that are more than one stop away from the West Side Market when it comes to public transportation. And as far as balancing all of the different uses that exist in Ohio City, including the amount of people that show up at the West Side Market, including the number of employees and residents, it's a good problem to have, I think, is to have so much activity that you're figuring out how to manage it. And so, I have conversations with the city on a regular basis about how we're going to solve the parking issue, but ultimately we're a multimodal neighborhood, we're a very walkable neighborhood, and we'll continue to build up our assets and deal with success as it comes. So.
You talked about growing pains. I mean, the growing pains we're experiencing in the restaurant business is capacity. We started running out of beer 12 days after we opened the brewery. So our 2-year plan for expansion became our 12-day plan. So we added 20% capacity. So good problems like that. There's waiting lists on the apartment buildings. The homes are hard to rent out. So I mean, we need more apartments. We need more places to live down there, and just to fill the demand that's out there.
And actually, I would just add to that really quickly. That is one of the problems that we have is you can't find an apartment in the Market District. Nearly everywhere has a waiting list. And so it's working with the city, but with real estate values where they are in the city, even with demand, it's still hard to make the numbers work from a real estate development perspective. And so the programs that the city has through its Department of Economic Development are critical. We have Rick Ferran in the audience today who's working on a 72-unit market rate apartment building on West 25th Street. Just last Wednesday, Cleveland City Council, with leadership of Councilman Simperman, passed a vacant property initiative loan to Rick Ferran that includes a grant component that's going to help bring those apartments, help close that gap between what it costs to do an apartment in Cleveland and what an apartment's actually worth in Cleveland. And so we really need to partner private, public sector to meet the demand that in urban areas you're always going to have to deal with that issue because we have this old infrastructure that can be replaced, and people like Rick are critical for that.
Yeah, I'll just add real quickly, to Ken and the rest of the folks from City Hall, we were actually beneficiaries of the same vacant property initiative loan program that helped us bridge that gap to get the brewery open.
And so it's not just adding positive uses, but it's keeping out negative uses. And Sam will tell you, and the folks at the city will tell you, that before he was able to do the Market Garden Brewery there was a battle that the neighborhood fought arm in arm with the councilman in the city to keep out a state liquor agency that was also going to have check cashing. And so would we be having a very different conversation if the 9,000 square foot space immediately next to the West Side Market were that use instead of the incredible success that Sam is having there?
One of these questions, he mentioned specifically the warehouse district, and there is this concern, this is, for at least for Cleveland in some ways, is sort of a new situation or a new old situation of people living in places where there's also business going on, and you talk about the 24/7 city. Some people say, I want to go to bed. I don't necessarily I like living here, I don't want noise and things going on at all hours of the day and night. As somebody who's been in the neighborhood, what do you hear from your neighbors and stuff, and especially people who've been there for a while, about the added bustle and the longer nights?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some obviously the parking issues we've talked about. I actually live on 25th. I can look out the window of my building and see both of my patios, and I can hear them as well sometimes. But I enjoy that. I like that. If you want quiet, you go a block into the neighborhood, and it's nice and peaceful, and lots of trees and yards and whatnot. So I think you have both. Mm-hmm. So if you want the energy, you can be right hard up on the street. If you want a little more quiet, you move into the neighborhood some.
My wife and I live on West 32nd Street. We lived above Bier Market before we bought our house, and coincidentally right across the hall from Grady Sizemore from the Cleveland Indians. So, which is partially why I had to leave, because my wife was chasing him all over the neighborhood. So I kid. Yeah, exactly. I kid, but that's in thriving neighborhoods, complete neighborhoods, you need to have a life cycle of opportunities for people. And so while it really fit our needs post-college, we're certainly more fit now to having a house that's still just a 10-minute walk away from everything that's available in the Market District, but still having that peace and quiet. And so we should have, as people's economic circumstances change, as their family needs change, a true complete neighborhood should be providing a place for them to stay so you can move up without necessarily moving out.
Yeah, so many ways to ask this question, and Joe, you kind of alluded to it twice. Why are the hours the way they are? And would it ruin the character of the market to be open on Saturday and Sunday?
Christine, you want to talk about where does that discussion stand? Because there are...
Well, the hours have been the same standard hours since the market first opened in 1912. So those sets of hours have stayed the same over its history. There's, I think, kind of an ongoing conversation that rises and falls about changing the hours, going to Sundays. And I think that right now, while we're looking at the market Centennial, that the priorities should be about looking at investing into the market so it goes into the future, looking at ways that we can put monies into the infrastructure of the market, ways to help with the parking situation and things like that. I think the hours discussion tends to unravel and fall apart right now. And I think that there are certainly models of other markets that have made a transition into Sunday hours. Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia introduced Sunday hours probably about 10 or 15 years ago, and that the way that they did that was that it was not mandatory. It was open Sundays if they wanted to do. So what happened was, I think it was a slow transition. Some vendors never open on Sundays there. They have an Amish community there that just won't open on Sundays. But for those who have, they have realized that there was an economic benefit to doing that. So that's one option of ways to do it. Other markets are open 7 days a week. And I think not necessarily that there's a correlation of it, but if you look at the vendor mix of what's there on like a Pike Place market that's open 7 days a week, you're looking at places that are restaurants, that are arts and crafts, that have a lot of tourist-driven shops and retail there. And I think that what makes the market so special and authentic is that it is a food staple place for people in the neighborhood and the community to get their weekly groceries.
Jeff, I would just add, and Jeff probably can answer this better than I. Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for, because Christine talked a little bit about that balance of the traditions of the market, and people do like to know their vendor, and so the question becomes, these are family-run businesses, how do you adjust the hours of the market in a way that better serves what customers are asking for, which we know a little bit more about after we've done our market research, while at the same time not having the unintended consequences of creating less family-owned businesses at the market. And so I think it's a complicated conversation, but it's certainly one that's worth having, and we can be creative about different ways. For example, there are hours that the market is currently open now that are very low traffic. You know, Mondays, nearly half the vendors don't open. It opens at 7 a.m. on weekdays. I generally run in to get coffee around 8 a.m., and I'd say there are less than half generally that are open on a weekday before 9 a.m. And so the question becomes, could you potentially adjust hours to where they're more likely to be successful, which we know a little bit about from local customers and what their preferences are, while at the same time eliminating hours where they don't make sense in this day and age. And so you're not necessarily working more hours, but you're working smarter hours. And I think that's something that we can look at.
Jeff, what's your perspective as somebody who runs a family business essentially there, and what your thoughts and what you hear from the people around you?
I think that one of the things that needs to be done is that we need to do our due diligence into investing into the research to find out not only what our customers want, but what people that are not shopping at the market would want, and find out, it could be it's our hours that we don't get a larger market base, and I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. But I don't think that we should go right after hours. I think that we should look at, again, like I said, what the customer is asking for in the market. I know that ever since I've been at the market, it's only been 7 years. I mean, there's a table full of guys over here that have, they triple, quadruple how long I've been at the market, and they know the pains that they've gone through over the years with this discussion. And one of the biggest concerns is that the city's going to come along and push really hard for Sunday hours. I personally would not want Sunday hours. I think that that would be a huge mistake in the market. I do think that looking at some later hours to accommodate the people that are, you get off on a Wednesday, you get out of work 4 or 5 o'clock. The market's already closed. You can't shop at the market. So I think that needs to be looked at very carefully. But it's been a big conversation at the market, and it's one that I know that market management and OC&W come up against all the time as a real problem.
So Jeff, you mentioned market research, and I think we should flip this around and ask the audience a question. And Vince over there, who's been at the market longer than I've been alive, we also buy our burgers from him. Does a great job. But I know you think the hours should change. The Sunday debate is very controversial. But let's ask the audience: how many people shop on Sundays? Okay, just curious.
And that's National Grocery Store or Grocery Numbers in the Market is not a grocery store show that Sunday is the second busiest day for groceries during the week. So not that should drive this conversation, but it's why this conversation continues to come up.
It's great to hear about all the growth and activity in Ohio City, but my question is, what is happening with the building, which I believe was an old bank building on the southwest corner? The Penzies Spice is in there now, and also I understand a really important, great new restaurant's going in there. What's the status of that? Who owns it? What are your plans?
So we're very fortunate. The building described by Jan is the United Bank building, and I referenced Ari Marin from MRN Ltd. Of East 4th Street earlier in the conversation. The Marins are doing a $20 million redevelopment of not only the 8-story historic United Bank building, but also almost the entire surrounding block. And it's been incredible. Jeff will become a tenant of that building on August 9th or 8th. but the energy, there used to be a saying that there were two Ohio cities, the north of Lorain, Ohio City, and the south of Lorain, Ohio City. And I think the United Bank building, the Market District project, as it's called by the Marins, is an example that's not true. And we're growing. Whatever divisions were there were probably imaginary and are being quickly erased by what is the merging of north and south of Lorain Avenue. Crop Bistro is one of two businesses that will add over 300 seats. Sam's Market Garden is the other. Crop Bistro is relocating from West 6th Street in downtown, not because they weren't doing well downtown, but because they were outgrowing their space. They're actually, you talk about the availability of local food, they're going to have a 2,500 square foot crop local market, which will be a bodega offering fresh produce, artisan cheeses. It'll have a deli. So what Steve Schmoller, the proprietor of that place, says is, if it's on the menu, you'll be able to buy it in the market, and if it's in the market, you'll be able to order it off the menu. And I think that's symbolic of the complete food system that we're building in Ohio City. And Crop, along with Bon Bon Bakery, which some of you have probably seen at those farmers markets that you head to, is moving in next door, along with Salty Not Sweet, Campbell's, room service. Voodoo Monkey's probably the best tattoo shop in Ohio that recently doubled its space there. So that's where that activity that we're talking about, south of Lorain's arrived. Mark Raymond, I know, is going to bring Cleveland its first hostel, which is incredibly exciting. There's a very good chance that he'll end up as part of that Market District development. So good things are happening over there, and that's a corner of this neighborhood that has been stabilized, and we're really excited about it, so thanks.
Hi, I've become the unofficial historian of the market because I've been doing research for 2 years for a book that will come out in 2012 for the Centennial. And what's interesting is that there are a lot of myths and stories that have arisen about the market that turn out not to be true. So I can't resist jumping in and saying that there was a very long period of time when the market was open till 10 o'clock at night, on Saturdays, sometimes on Fridays, because that's when people shopped. The notion of maintaining tradition is really important because it has become part of the market's identity. But the market has always been a place where people come to get food, and so it has to be open when people can come to get food. And I have historic documentation that they just stayed open because the guys that get off work in the flats go home with a paycheck, pick up the wife and kids, and everybody would go. Actually, there was an interesting synergy. I've got some anecdotal evidence that the men would go have drinks while the wives shopped. Also, they may have made some other stops. There was a number of other kinds of diversions in the neighborhood. Including a bar that had dog fights on one level and cockfights on another. But that people came at night, it was a social space and a time when you bought your food. So that I think that when these conversations, which you keep alluding to, are so important, the notion of we've always done it this way, if that's important, then everybody needs to know what you've always done. And it's actually a more complicated, interesting story about the evolution of the market.
Very good. Thank you. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a panel discussion featuring Jeff Campbell, Westside Market vendor, Sam McNulty, Market District proprietor, Eric Wobser, Executive Director, Ohio City Incorporated, and Christine Zuniga-Eadie, manager of the Westside Market. It's been moderated by me, Joe Frolik, editorial writer and columnist for The Plain Dealer. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And this program is now adjourned.